Therefore, since Christ suffered in his body, arm yourselves also with the same attitude. Because he who has suffered in his body is done with sin. As a result, he does not live the rest of his earthly life for human desires, but rather for the will of God. For you have spent enough time in the past doing what pagans chose to do, living in debauchery, lust, drunkenness, orgy, carousing, and detestable idolatry. They think it strange that you do not plunge with them into the same flood of dissipation, and they heap abuse on you. But they will have to give account to him who is ready to judge the living and the dead. For this is the reason the gospel was preached, even to those who are now dead, so that they may be judged according to men in regard to the body, but live according to God in regard to the spirit. The end of all things is near. Therefore, be clear-minded and self-controlled so that you can pray. Above all, love each other deeply, because love covers over a multitude of sins. Offer hospitality to one another without grumbling. Each one should use whatever gift he has received to serve others, faithfully administering God's grace in its various forms. If anyone speaks, he should do it as one speaking the very words of God. If anyone serves, he should do it with the strength God provides, so that in all things God may be praised through Jesus Christ. To him be the glory and the power forever and ever. Amen. Here's my summary. When it comes to suffering, you need to have the same attitude as Jesus. Jesus' suffering meant the end of sin, and it can mean the same for you if your attitude is the same. Face it, you've been living the world's way for a very long time. And there's a list there to demonstrate what that's like. And when you live that way, or when you stop living that way, there's a likelihood that you'll be abused, but don't worry about that, because judgment is coming for those who would abuse you, which is why it's important to preach the gospel to people before they die. Look, the end is coming. Start living right. That's what the passage says. Okay, I'm done. Have a great day. Wouldn't that be nice? No, I'm sorry. The going overtime gene goes strong with me. Actually, what I did today is because I wanted to illustrate this, I did a little art project. You didn't know I was artistic, did you? Actually, when I was in college, I was an elementary education major for 3 years. And I had to take a class called Arts and Crafts. One of the only A's that I got in college was in Arts and Crafts, because I just like to do that kind of thing. I'm not very good. But, this kind of thing is pretty simple. I asked my kids, do you know what this is? They said, it's a waffle. That's not true. They knew what it was. It's not a waffle, if that's what you were thinking. But I made some sculptures, and we'll be auctioning these off after the second service. So you just come and bid if you want one of these. To help kind of walk through this passage. Really, as we look at this, one of the things that jumps out is that there's two lists in this passage that are kind of a contrast with each other. The first list is this list of all of the things that Paul says are the old way of life, and the second list is the new way. But we're going to talk about these in a contrast between a mirror and a window. Okay? We're going to talk about the mirror and the window. And I want you to think about this. How do I view the world? Do I view the world through a window, or do I view the world through a mirror? Have you ever been in a gym where people are like lifting weights, and you know they've got like the mirrors all over the walls? Now, for somebody like me, that's a little unnerving. The last thing I want to see is myself working out. But I think there are some people who go there and they're there more for the mirrors than for the working out. Have you seen these people? They're in there and they get right up to the mirror. They're going to lift their weights, going to do some curls. I got to be careful, I don't want to rip my shirt. And they're pumping their iron and look at me, yeah. And then it's kind of my hair still. When we look in a mirror, what do we see? ourselves. And if we see someone who's always looking in the mirror, what do we typically think of them? Kind of vain, kind of obsessed with themselves. And a lot of times we view the whole world around us through a mirror. Because we look at the world and we see ourselves. I see my own needs, my own desires, my own wants, and everything that's going on around me somehow is related to me. And it gains or loses importance depending on how it affects me. And honestly, this is the natural way in our world. It has been since Genesis 3. Read Genesis 3 after Adam and Eve ate the fruit and see how that changed their perspective of the world around them. In Genesis 2, it was all about the animals, the creation, each other. In Genesis 3, it's all about me. God says to Adam, Adam, why'd you eat the fruit? Now, he could have given a really good reason. Not a really good reason. He could have given the truth. But instead, what did he choose to do? He gave his answer in the way that could most benefit him. Wasn't me. And what did Eve do? Her answer was the same. Wasn't me. The reality is we are, as natural human beings, we are obsessed with taking care of ourselves. A guy named Maslow created this hierarchy of needs, right? And many of you are familiar with Maslow and his hierarchy of needs, where he says, here's what people need. And the most important thing that Mr. Maslow says that people need are the things to take care of ourselves. Life in the mirror. I look in the mirror and I see everything else. I still see everything behind me, but what's really important is me. Now contrast that to viewing the world through a window. I don't see myself. Someone who chooses to view the world through the window is someone who's no longer so obsessed with themselves that they're willing to look beyond themselves and see others, see what's going on around them, get out of the here and now and maybe see the bigger picture. And the reality is that we as Christ followers ought to be here, not here. Look at the way that Peter describes life in the mirror. Okay? 1 Peter 4:3. For you have spent enough time in the past doing what pagans choose to do, living in debauchery, lust, drunkenness, orgies, carousing, and detestable idolatry. What is it like to look in the mirror? It is to be totally obsessed with yourself. Read this list, pay less attention to the specifics, more attention to the big picture of these things, and what do you see? You see someone who lives to indulge their most base desires. You see someone who views others as objects to be used for my pleasure. You see someone who is addicted to excess because it's good for me. And Peter says, that's the way you used to live, and you've lived that way. You've lived looking in the mirror long enough. And then he jumps ahead to verse 7 and says, now look, time is short. You need to take a different view. And the view he says that we need to take is in verse 7, the end of all things is near. Therefore, be clear-minded and self-controlled so that you can pray. Above all, love each other. Verse 9, offer hospitality to each other. Verse 10, each one should use whatever gift he has received to serve others. Do you see the amazing difference between the two? We go from someone who's all about me, to someone who's, first of all, clear-minded and self-controlled, which means what? It means I've taken those desires, those sinful urges, and I've suppressed them, and now I'm thinking about others. Love is outward focused.